Section 5.2 is on solving inequalities with multiplication and division. Let's take a look at the multiplication and division property of inequalities. You can multiply or divide both sides of an inequality by the same positive number, and the inequality remains true, just as we would with equations. Multiply or divide both sides of the equation by the same number. Second part of this, but if you multiply or divide both sides of an inequality by the same negative number, you need to reverse the inequality sign to make it true. So if you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to flip that inequality. Your less than will become a greater than, or your greater than will become a less than. Let's take a look at some examples here. First one, 3/4 times x is greater than or equal to 9. Solve this as you would an equation. I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of 3/4, that is 4/3. And if I want to, I can put that over 9 over 1. So those will cancel out and leave me with x is greater than or equal to, notice no changing of the sign because I multiplied by a positive number. And I'll do a little canceling here. X is greater than or equal to 12. I can put that into set builder notation. And to graph it, I'm just going to do it on a simple number line. And it's greater than or equal to, so a solid dot over 12 and heading off to the right. My second example, -3/5 x is greater than 6. So again, since instead of dividing by the fraction, I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal, which would be a -5/3 on both sides, times a -5/3. I'll go ahead and put my 6 over 1. On this side, my 3's cancel, my 5's cancel, a negative times a negative is a positive, and I have an x. Now, because I multiplied by a -5/3, my greater than is going to become a less than. And this side becomes -10. So x is less than -10. Let's graph that. -10, -9, -11. Remember, negative numbers, it seems to kind of go backwards. If you're not sure, take a look at the number line up in the classroom. Since it's a less than, it's going to be an open circle over the 10 and going to the left. Number 3 is 6x is greater than -42. To solve this, I'm going to divide both sides by 6. So x is greater than -7. Now, why didn't I flip that? There's a negative in the problem. You don't flip it just because there's a negative in the problem. You only flip it when you multiply or divide by a negative. I divided by a positive 6, so there's no flipping. So I'll write it in set builder, graph it, it's a greater than -7, so it's going that way. Okay, and example number 4, -2x is less than or equal to 5. I'll divide both sides by a -2. So x is, now I divided by a -2, so I do need to flip my inequality. That's -5/2. Since we have to graph this, it might be a little bit easier to write that as a mixed number, -2.5, although I'll accept either one of those. And when we graph it, I'll put -2.5 in the middle, -2 to the right, -3 to the left, and it's going to be a greater than or equal to. Now let's take a look at a couple word problems here. So we need to define a variable, write an inequality, and solve. A prepaid phone plan is $50 at 13 cents per minute. For how many minutes can you talk on this plan? Okay, so define your variable means write a let statement. Let x equal the number of minutes. And each minute is 13 cents. So to write 13 cents as a decimal, 0.13 times the number of minutes, that means 13 cents per minute, is actually going to be less than or equal to 50 because that's how many you get for $50 on your plan. Dividing both sides by 0.13. Pull my calculator up here. Okay. Whoop. Okay, so x is less than or equal to, and I get 384.615, and it keeps going on. Let's be practical. You're not going to talk 6/10 of a minute, so your answer is going to be 384 minutes. Okay, and our last example. Admission to a museum is $12.50. How many people can go for $280? So define your variable. Let x equal the number of people who can go to the museum. Okay. And so each ticket is $12.50 times the number of people, and we only have $280, so that total cost has to be less than or equal to $280. There's my inequality to solve this. I'll divide both sides by $12.50. And let me grab my calculator here. So that comes out to 22.4, but we can't take 4/10 of a person, so we're going to have to round that down. So 22 people can go to the museum for $280. In this lesson, we took a look at solving inequalities using multiplication and division. And it's very similar to solving an equation where you can multiply or divide both sides by the same number, except when you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number. Then you have to remember to flip your inequality sign. Your less than becomes a greater than, or your greater than becomes a less than.